It is 10:30. It's 10:31 actually. But it is time to catch up with a friend of ours who's indoors. He's indoors. Can you believe it? Miguel Gallardo is indoors.
What's going on, John? Pleasure to see you. And for a change this time, we're indoors. We're not getting that vitamin D today.
Nothing wrong with that, brother. I'm glad you were able to join us on the midweek to kind of break things down in Major League Soccer. I do have a couple of questions, but then we can just kind of freeform it and figure out what's on your mind as we're here. I got to start with the purple team and ask what in the wide world of sports is going on. So I will ask you, sir, what in the wide world of sports is going on with the purple team right now?
Yeah, I wish I knew. I wish they knew. I think that's the biggest question. Obviously, this is a rebuild year for Orlando City. Did I imagine it to be a rebuild year? Did they think it was going to be a rebuild year? I don't know, if I'm honest with you, because they had some really good pieces from last year that they did a really nice job during the season. They fell apart towards the end. There's been a change at the helm of the whole organization, soccer-wise, which is now it was Luis Musi, who was a VP of soccer operations, and now it's Ricardo Moreira. And he, I suppose, wants to put his own, touch on this team. And the first big move or acquisitions was to get 3 U22 initiative Brazilians that were unproven at the top level in the first division. And yes, it is true that Otavio, Thiago had a little bit more experience with the first team, but Iago, who was a center back, yes, he was a captain of the U19's Brazilian national team, but he wasn't really getting minutes with Flamengo, and probably not many young players will get minutes with Flamengo because that's one of the best teams in the continent.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is to gamble on 3 U22 initiative players and spend close to $10 million. It's what I just called it. It is a gamble. And as we start the season, it has not been a positive situation for those players. Now, there's also other things that are very important to note, like Robin Janssen, your captain, center back, goes down early on in the season. They just now got him back, and the result was the team is able to get a point. Wilder Cartagena was a player that was very important in 2024. They were hoping to get him back this season. He gets hurt again. He should be back, relatively soon. But Pasalic is not the Pasalic that started the season last year. Martin Ojeda is not having the start of the season that he had. But another move that was interesting was them getting rid of Luis Muriel, and there was a lot of criticism about him, about his lack of intensity when it comes to pressing, his lack of intensity when it comes to defending. But at the end of the day, that's not how the guy made his money, and probably should have known that when you brought him into Orlando City. Now, I will say that the best moments of Orlando City last year was with Muriel involved on the pitch, and obviously they get rid of him to make space for not what we now know is going to be an Antoine Griezmann.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know the intricacies of, hey, could you have gotten rid of Muriel right before you get Griezmann? Like, I don't know those contractual obligations or those intricacies that, maybe made you get rid of Muriel before the season started and you didn't really have a replacement for him. So, and I think that had to do with some of the results. And ultimately, the most important thing is you got rid of an experienced coach in Oscar Pareja who, call it what you want. He got the team in playoffs every year, and the team always looks stable. Now, was he the guy that's going to help you win a title? I think after 5 seasons, they decided that probably that wasn't the case. So, listen, I know that they're going through a lot of changes. The team is going to stabilize. It doesn't look good at the moment. Martin Peterman is an inexperienced coach at the first division. He did a great job with Orlando City B. He's coached in Argentina and other places, but it seems like Orlando City is going through some dark times, and I just don't know when those dark times are going to get better before the summer. And even when Antoine Griezmann gets involved, I think there's a lot more you need to do to this roster. That there's a lot more. There are a lot of weak spots, in my opinion. So interesting. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting times for Orlando City. Hopefully, they can start to see some change in the positive way after the World Cup when Antoine Griezmann comes into the team.
Yeah, because when we started the season, Oscar, and I still may have the soundbite, but Oscar was not a happy man at media day. He was
No.
not. And then you bring in Griffin Dorsey from Houston. Then it made Ben Olsen not a happy man. But then you bring Griffin Dorsey over to help things out. But Oscar's like, well, I need A, B, C, D, and E to help things going on. And,
Sure.
and I wondered with what happened at the end of last year, where you got to a point and then you end up with the fade, and then you get bounced in the and you have the early season successes, and then it just goes, and if you were going to be evaluated by the front office after last year, and you have Oscar getting, Oscar being displeased at media day, and then you have that quick trigger early in the season where were things completely untenable, and it just got to a point to where you couldn't do anything X number of matches in. So the patience that you showed by bringing him back didn't end up with the patience that you showed at the beginning of the year when things didn't get off to a start. Does that make? I mean, am I making any sense here? It's just
no, you are making you are making a ton of sense. And look, I think that because Ricardo Moreira is new at this particular role, he's been a number 2 guy for years. I think that there's a lot of learning that needs to happen for him in this role, and there's so many things that now he's responsible for. I do think that them keeping Oscar Pareja was more of we're not really prepared to what's next.
Oh, okay.
And for what's next. And I will say this is that Oscar Pareja has been coaching for such a long time. He's been at the club for 5-6 years. And I think he kind of sensed where this was going in terms of some of the players that they were going to be bringing in, and some of the players that maybe were not going to come in based on maybe what Oscar Pareja wanted. And I do think that there was a lack of connection between him and the technical staff, because I don't think that they were aligned in what they wanted. And I think that ultimately was the trigger for what ended up happening. And, I think they have a good relationship, of course. Oscar Pareja and Ricardo Moreira worked together for many years, and there's a lot of respect, a mutual respect between each other. But maybe they were not aligned in the vision of what they wanted. Ricardo Moreira wants a team to play a certain way. Oscar Pareja, wanted to play a certain way based on the players that he had. And I will say credit to Oscar Pareja that over the years, he evolved so much when it comes to the style of play, because I remember the first 2-3 years, it was the Papi special. It was score a goal, sit back, and try to, grind out a result. And I remember 2024 season, the team was winning, and then the subs that were coming in, they were like they were attacking subs, and I'm like, wow, he's going for more goals. And then I had a personal conversation with him, and he told me, he's like, well, I'm at the mercy of what I have. So if I have players that are going to come in and change the game by scoring another goal, then that's what I'm going to do. And if I have players that are going to come in and help me solidify a victory, then that's what I'm going to do. So over the years, I saw an evolution of Orlando City when it comes to philosophy and playing style. And that obviously speaks a lot of Oscar Pareja. But look, at the end of the day, I've been in a locker room where you've had the same coach for many, many years, and sometimes a different voice, a different message is needed. And I don't know that that's what was needed here from Orlando, but sometimes that's what it is. And I can't tell you, obviously, as we see it now, it's not the right decision, but this isn't I would like to think that the idea of this is not let's win today. It's let's start rebuilding for tomorrow and start developing young players. My hope for Orlando City is that these young Brazilians, once they get acclimated, once they got a better roster around them, they become what Ricardo Moreira thinks they can become. And then they don't just become serviceable players for MLS, but are those players that you can sell to Europe. And if that's the model that Orlando City wants to go with, I don't know that. They haven't personally told me that, but it seems like that could be one of the ways that they want to go, right? They got a nice taste of it when they sold Freeman to Villarreal. and that probably got them excited. They say, well, where can we get more of these young players that we can sell to Europe? But it's not that easy. Freeman was a a jewel
Mm-hmm.
that they found in South Florida, and they brought to Orlando City B, a couple of years before he made his debut with the first team. But the kid was developed in South Florida, and so, but obviously they did a nice job of recruiting the player and then continuing to develop him and put him in Orlando City B, where he was a winger, scored a ton of goals, and turned him into a fullback. Now, hindsight 2020, a lot of people think, well, you could have. Why didn't you put him like the year before that? You know what I mean? You already had him in the system. He was banging goals for fun, and look, ultimately, it worked out very well for them. And now he is in Villarreal. He'll go to the World Cup. I think now, because he's not playing as much in Villarreal, that looks a little bit grayer, for lack of a better word. But I think he'll be involved in the World Cup, and I think that was a nice experience for Orlando City, where maybe, just maybe, getting these Brazilian players is going to, that's the hope for them, is that they can develop them, put them in good situations, and then hopefully sell them to Europe.
Yeah, the whole thing with Oscar and the lack of patience is what really kind of got under my skin. It's like, well, if you were that fed up with him, then why didn't you just cut ties at the end of last year, so you're not having all of the shenanigans that you had at the beginning of the year, and then you dismiss him, and then you bring Martin Perelman up, who is, OCB, MLS Next Pro, and you're throwing him into this situation with players that he might know from, seeing on the other side of the training facility, but he's focused on OCB, and it's just it's like you open your fridge, like when we're bachelors.
Yeah.
And it's like you open up your fridge. It's like, okay, it's time to eat dinner.
Let me see what I got.
Yeah, literally. It's like, okay, I want a sandwich. And then you just kind of look and you see, okay, is the bread moldy? No. Okay, so I can make a sandwich. What about the meat over here, the cheese here? Oh, I'll add some A1. It's like, literally, it's like you got all this stuff that's happening for this Dagwood sandwich, and it's just, if you're, what's the feedback that you're getting in Central Florida? What's the patience level with?
No, people are. I mean, you've seen at the attendance of the stadium. They're at 70%, maybe. I would argue even lower at times, and you can see it on social media. People are really, really upset, and I agree with you with the whole Oscar Pareja thing. I do think that this was, and I from what I understand, and don't quote me on this, Oscar Pareja, like, he told them, it's like, I am good. Like, if you guys want me to step aside at the end of the year, and they wanted to keep him, and then, Oscar, this was sort of a mutual decision, and I don't think they needed to force Oscar out, because Oscar was kind of prepared for this, if as far as I understand, and like I said, he's got a reputation too. If he saw this coming, he's probably like, "Yep, I'm good."
Okay.
I took the team to playoffs every single year. I took him to a conference final. I took him to conference semifinal. I won a U.S. Open Cup. I brought playoffs every single year when the team had never made it to playoffs. If you look at his legacy with Orlando City, it's a pretty darn good one. And unfortunately, we live in a world where people remember what you're doing today, and not what you did yesterday. So imagine him seeing this boat sinking, and thinking, I don't want this to be the last thing people remember about me and my legacy with Orlando City, because, like I said, I think people will always respect him and admire him for what he was able to do with Orlando City.
It's a quick turn tonight. It is the purple team hosting Charlotte. Obviously, it's your dog tonight, and then you have to turn around, and then you're taking on DC on the road on Saturday night. When you look at these two matches back to back like this, what sticks in your head?
That they're both difficult matches, especially the one in Charlotte, even though it's at home. DC United, it's a little bit more attainable, but at the same time, DC United is probably looking at this game against Orlando City and thinking, yeah, we can win this one, right? So it's anyone's game. But, this one at home in particular for Charlotte, Charlotte's a really good team, very solid team. They're in playoff situation. They have a really good defense. They have Tim Ream as a leader on the back line, and people still question his ability to move fast and be fluid.
Because they're looking at that driver's license, brother. That's what they're looking at.
That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, the dude still looks good. He's part of the national team, and he's a leader back there. And he's got really nice support with this young center back in Morrison Ajiman. Mm-hmm. He's got good fullbacks in Toffolo and Nathan Byrne. I mean, this team is solid. And then they have one of the best goalkeepers, in my opinion, in the league, in Christian Kalina. I mean, the dude is a stud. He's got, I was just looking at this before this because I was looking at other stats, but like he's got the most saves in the league. He's got like 45 saves in the league, and obviously that doesn't speak well of the defense. But,
I was going to say now,
but I will say this: part of Dean Smith's style is to be defensive. And look, and I say this to people all the time when they ask me about like goalkeepers and particularly the Dane Sinclair's situation with Miami, right? Because when that signing happened, I called out and I said, look, I don't know that this is what they think it's going to be. You being a goalkeeper of the year, there's so much context to it. And I'll give you an example. Let's just look at the last 3 goalkeepers of the year. Who were they? Berkey from St. Louis. Yep. It was Kalina from Charlotte. It was Dane Sinclair from Minnesota. Mm-hmm. What was the common denominator of these teams that they played for? They were ultra defensive. They were low block teams. They were counterattacking teams, and so they gave up a lot of shots. But they were giving low percentage shots outside the box. And for the goalkeeper, speaking from my personal experience, that's the easiest thing to do as a goalkeeper. That's the one thing that you need to be good at, is being a shot stopper. Mm-hmm. And you could take 95% of the goalkeepers in Major League Soccer. They're all good shot stoppers. So stick most goalkeepers in those teams, and they will do a good job. Reason why is because the way that team defends, right? Yeah. And so I say that to say this about Kalina and Charlotte's defense. It's kind of by design that they take shots, but you could argue that they're low percentage shots because they're like outside of the box shots, 4 shots. And in return, they're a team that can score goals. Wilfred Taha is a really good player in 1v1 situations. Vargas is doing a really nice job taking over for Abada, who's kind of, is a roller coaster. The guy has a great game and then a really bad game, and Vargas is a little bit more consistent from that standpoint. And then you have Pep Biel in the middle of the field, who I think he's a fantastic player. The fact that they didn't have him in playoffs last year was to me a determining factor of why they weren't able to advance. And then up top, I mean, this is what I think about when I think of a well-planned sell of a player like Patrick Ajiman. Oh, yeah. They were very comfortable with that because they knew they had another guy that was probably better than Ajiman. And Ajiman is a stud. He's a speedster. He will press anything. He's a hard worker. But Tokolamari is probably a more complete player. So they're like, yeah, sure, we'll sell him because we know in an ideal case scenario for us, we have a player that can do a better job. Mm-hmm. So that, I think, lessons should be taken out of that transaction from Charlotte, speaking about other teams that we were speaking about. Yeah. But I think it's a very complete team. I think it's going to be very difficult for Orlando City. And let's see what Orlando City mentally is ready for, because, man, getting 6-0, 5-0, constantly losing. There's a little bit of, there's a little bit of confusion as to what's going on with the long-term project within the players, and maybe they have a clearer picture. I don't know, but that's difficult mentally because you go into games, you get scored on 1 goal, and then you put your head down, and it's like, oh my God, here we go all over again, and it just changes the way you approach the game. So it'll be interesting to see how they react. It was a good result against Houston, even though you were at home. But I think there were some nice things to build upon to head to go into this game.
One more question, and then I'll let you go to brunch and get on with your day.
Good, man.
You spent your time as a player between the sticks, and so you know what it's like to face all these shots, having to stand on your head, go full extension, sit there and yelling at your center backs and positioning and being screened and all this kind of stuff. What is, from your, and this is where I need you to think about you as a player, and then I need you as the analyst to think about you and a skill set. Keepers have their own identities, basically.
Sure.
And when you go out of, basically, when you cross the Rio Grande and you start heading south, what a lot of folks may think of as the U.S. goalkeeper idea gets different when you go Mexico, Central America, South America. And what I wanted to ask you was to kind of break down the idea of how different goalkeeping is when it comes to approach and bravery outside your box and being well off your line and being a sweeper keeper. Because there are times where this season where here in Atlanta, folks have seen Lucas Hoyos, and he'll be chasing after players trying to win possession outside the 18. He'll be 35 yards off his line playing sweeper keeper and thinking he's more of a 9 than he is a keeper. Can you, in your keeper brain,
sure,
break down the differences of the idea behind what we see in the South American and the Central American and the Mexico keepers versus what we're used to seeing here in Canada and the U.S.? How different is it, and why, and the makeup of these folks to become these kind of keepers? Can you break that down?
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's an interesting question. It's very loaded as well. I do think that the game is evolving, and you have South American goalkeepers becoming more shot stoppers and less mistake prone, and you have American goalkeepers who are in generations past more of shot stoppers, keep the game simple, keep the game in front of them, not necessarily guys that you're going to rely on to build out of the back. You're just going to rely on giving them the ball back, and they're going to take a touch and then boot it, and maybe boot it is a little bit offensive, more like look for a long pass. That's what I would say. Yeah. And I'll do a little parenthesis here to explain, I think, a lot of the criticism that's been happening over the last few months with the goalkeeper situation with the U.S. men's national team, where people are like, well, what's happening? We used to have so many good goalkeepers, Tim Howard, Brad Friedel, Brad Guzan, and all these guys. I mean, we could throw keepers, up in the air. We just pick one. They're all good. But the game has evolved so much, and the United States team has evolved so much. Those teams back then, they were a lot more defensive. They were a lot more modest and humble when they played against bigger teams, so to speak. And I'll take you back to that World Cup. Was it South Africa when the United States won 1-0? Who was it? I forget. Was it against an African team, if I'm not mistaken? Anyway, Tim Howard broke the record in saves, and then the team ended up winning. But that's because the U.S. played a lot more defensive. And in the last few years, the U.S. has become more of a dominant in possession. They want to get numbers forward. They want to play teams. With the ball. They want to send fullbacks high. They want to control the game a little bit more, and that requires something different from the goalkeepers that it wasn't required in those years, right? If you put Matt Freese and Matt Turner in those national teams of 15 years ago, 20 years ago, they would be phenomenal because what they were asking from the goalkeeper is a lot different than what they're asking for today. And what I would argue is that if some of those top level goalkeepers put them in the U.S. national team today, in the way they want to play today, I don't know if they will be as successful as they were back then, because it's just totally different the way the U.S. men's national team wants to play. Now, I will argue that all those guys were phenomenal athletes, and there's no doubt in my mind that they could adjust to what the game asked of them, right? Mm-hmm. And so I say that to say that it's been evolving. The game is asking different things from goalkeepers. In South America, you have guys who are goalkeepers that were also very good on the ball because, we grow up playing soccer every single day outside, dribbling until we lose the ball. We're not passing it until we need to pass it. And, for myself, that was kind of my style as a player. I mean, I was a possession style goalkeeper. They could pass me the ball. I could break a line. I would make mistakes, but that was kind of part of the game, that's what Mikey Vars is asking for his goalkeeper. And then he made a mistake the other day and it goes viral, but that's because that's what they want from him. And for that one mistake that he's made, you can go back and take a look at a bunch of clips where their goals start from a sequence from the goalkeeper being brave and breaking a line with a pass that is very risky. Absolutely. And if I was the coach, I'd be having a heart attack, but that's what they want from the guy. But it's very easy to focus on the mistakes, and that's a risk that you take when you play that way. So I think the game is evolving. Like I said, I think I like a combination of both. I really do. And as I grew in my career, and as I start evolving in my career, I realized, you know what? Maybe I don't need to take so many risks coming out for balls. Like you know, in the penalty area. Because in my mind, I was like, I want to prevent the guy heading the ball that way I don't have to make a save, right?
Yeah.
And that takes a risk, and that doesn't go down in the stat sheet, and that doesn't look as cool as staying in your line waiting for the guy to make a play, and then you have to make a save. Because if you get scored on, no problem, it was a clean header. But if you make a save, like, that's great. But it's I'm rambling a little bit here with that situation, but that's what I mean with Hoyos. With Hoyos, he takes a ton of risk. I think a lot of times unnecessary risks. um, I think that's part of what Tata Martino wants from him, because Tata Martino wants to be a possession-based team, and I don't know if Hebert is that guy. I don't know. I don't know him as well as I would like to know him, just because I only have a sample size of when he was able to get some games. But I will tell you something very important, because I did ask Tata Martino about that situation. Um, and I said, "Do you really want your goalkeeper to be so risky? What does Hoyos bring to the table that Hebert doesn't bring to the table?" And I know what it is, but I want to hear it from you so that I can say on the broadcast, "Hey, Hoyos brings this to the table," because how can you explain to them that you're bringing a goalkeeper that's 37, 30, 36, 37 years old, that's 5'10", that in that particular time of our interview with Tata Martino had not had a great start, and he still hasn't proven to be a great goalkeeper. What is it about him that is making you play him over Hebert? And you know what he said to me?
Hmm.
He said, "We brought Hoyos as an investment to make Hebert better."
Mm-hmm.
So, and I thought that was really interesting. Now, how much do I believe of that? I don't know, because look, if Hoyos is not giving you the results, it's not. And I'm not saying he's the only player that's liable, because everybody there is in shambles at the moment. I would have thought that there would be opportunities to play Hebert more now, because of the situation. And if your bet is your young goalkeeper, well, this is a time to play your young goalkeeper, because there's so many things that need fixing. Might as well put him in this situation to see what he can do. So anyway, I went a little long on that one, but that's a bit of the difference that I think of the South American, the American. But again, they're both evolving
Yeah.
into ultimately what is the best goalkeeper, and I think it's a combination of everything.
Yeah, because I know that some folks might be drawn back to Jorge Campos and
Yeah,
who he was,
that
and
is crazy.
see those kinds of activities where, shoot, he thought he was a 9. We know this.
He was a 9. That's the difference with him. He actually played as a 9.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
But
he played games as a striker.
and so, like, I wanted to have folks kind of understand where Lucas Hoyos is between the ears, and just understand, how he was brought up and what he brings to the table. And I understand, and that's why I thought he was brought in with what Tata told you. Was I thought that you were going to have that experienced voice with, and Brad still is on campus too, so he gets to go back and forth with Brad. Jaden does, and he also gets to know from a 36-year-old Lucas Hoyos about how to work with your feet and all these kinds of things. But I wanted to have you, from your perspective, since you are a keeper, I wanted to have you kind of break it down to what folks can anticipate, should anticipate, and if they see X, Y, and Z, that they're sitting there going, okay, yeah, I heard the conversation that Nelly had with Miguel, and this is what he told me. So that's why I just wanted to have you bring it out there for folks so they knew what they were looking at.
Ultimately, it's about decision making, right? It's about decision making, and you can be the most technical goalkeeper, you can be the cleanest goalkeeper, but it's about decisions. And so, okay, yes, can does Hoyos have the ability to make a 20-30 yard pass on the ground to a defensive midfielder or one of their number 8s, so that he can turn and then attack? Is that the right decision in that particular moment?
Mm-hmm.
That's what, to me, that's what it comes down to. It's decision making, and technical ability is one thing. Is making the right choice at the right time for what's better for your team. That's when good players separate from the not so good ones.
Okay. When's your next broadcast, by the way?
It'll be tonight. We have Columbus. I have Columbus and LA Galaxy. I'm here in Columbus right now. Beautiful weather. Yeah. Really excited about it. Obviously in the beginning of the season, before the season started, you would have thought that these two teams would have been in a much better situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that talent-wise, that they do have what it takes to be playoff teams, and I think that they will get there. Especially now with LA Galaxy that is done with CONCACAF Champions Cup. They have some players back. They have Painter back tonight. They're coming off a pretty good result on the road against Dallas. And then Columbus Crew, we'll see how they react to the loss of Abu Ali,
Mm-hmm.
who was obviously a prolific goal scorer. But they do some really nice things. And obviously under Rydstrom, new coach, I mean, there's some similarities to what Wilfred Nancy was doing, but I have to give it to the players because it's not easy to go from Wilfred Nancy to really anyone else. And I still think they have a good team. Rossi is a top player, and they have some real nice passages of play. Hopefully, it's a good game today. But I know it's going to be a game where both teams are going to want to get on the ball, and those games I enjoy.
Yep, and you get to hang out with our friend Chris Doran, the play-by-play voice for Columbus Crew. And
yes, sir, nice guy.
He is a part of the fam. So when you see him, just give him a big old hug and a kiss, and say hi, and have a great call. Who's play-by-play with you tonight?
I got Ramses Sandoval.
Oh, okay, all right. So it is you and Ramsey Sandoval tonight in Columbus at the Death Star as LAG takes on Crew. Good to see you, my friend. It's been entirely too long. Do not be a stranger. Have a great call. Save your voice. Go get some brunch, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, John. Appreciate you.
There goes Miguel Gallardo. Oh, that's so cool. That is so cool. We got to catch up with him on a Wednesday. That was a very, very atypical. And like I said, the fact that Miguel was trying so hard last week on Friday to kind of jump in, and he was out in somebody's backyard in some forest somewhere in Central Florida.